this minimum. So the next few comments talked about, we had requested to have 21 days prior for you doing your trainings, but we have kept it as 5 days, which is what you requested. The next one was for the regs 238 golf are appreciated in addition to 238 echo, which has 3 years experience. They were suggesting an additional 1 year experience as a lead cabin crew member. So we did the review, and after research and accommodation of stakeholders' comments, 2 years experience as cabin crew was settled upon. That was because 1 year is not adequate for you to become a trainer, especially for cabin crew, because it's a safety related function. So the one for 251, we had talked about it earlier. And the one for 21 days, we've also addressed it. The next comment was about the air ambulance, which is something that is being worked on in Naivasha as we speak. And once we come up with the drafts, we'll call the people who are the stakeholders to come back so that we can review that. For 248, for deadhead transportation, we said it's not a new regulation. The text was amended for clarity. Definition was added to enhance meaning of existing regulations, which defined the same thing. However, the new definition was deleted to accommodate the stakeholders' comment. The next one for 252, Charlie, we were supposed to provide guidance on additional cabin crew members required for extended flight duty operations. So it was amended accordingly, and what we've said, in relation to a cabin crew, 15 hours, which shall apply to a cabin crew member as it applies to flight engineers. What we saw with it, it was copied from the CAP 394, but the sentences were interchanged. That's why it wasn't making sense. So that's why we removed it from. The next one will just project the need to establish a group of aircrafts as a single type. All aircraft at or below 12,500 pounds, which is 5,700 kilos, should be given consideration as a single type. So if you go through that, we've actually accommodated it, what you said about the PPCs. And with this, we'll have to file a difference as a state just to be able to accommodate our operators. So for the next one, we have addressed it. And then the regulation 246, instead of notifying the authority of the trainings, we could consider using training plans matrix submitted after every 3 months. Most of the times we do not train all the employees at a go. We do it in small groups. So a quarterly training matrix is acceptable. All we are saying is with your training matrix, in case of a change, just let us know, because it also makes it easy for us in case we want to sit in one of your trainings. So we don't want that we look at your 3-month training period and you said you'll be training someone on this day, then when we show up, you say that you had changed. So that's the only thing we're asking. In case you deviate from your plan, just let us know. And even an email can suffice. You don't have to write a letter. Okay, so for the next one, which said it might be a typo because there is no regulation 248.9. The one for notification, we have dealt with it. The one for 5 days. The next one, it says for an instructor who fails under the have held category, does this part refer to past recency when the instructor was operating as a cabin crew, or are the instructors expected to maintain cabin crew recency despite not having a valid CMC? So what we said is appropriate competency and recency of experience checks are required for the privilege to instruct being sought. Then the guidance material on instructors is currently being developed, which will elaborate further to outline ways to keep current as instructors. So we have amended the regulation for clarity, so which says has satisfactorily completed the appropriate competency and recency of experience checks required for the privilege to instruct being sought. So for cabin crew instructors, the authority could deny the approval based on merit as they observed them prior to approval. So the comment was noted, and yes, after candidate has met the minimum requirements, the authority shall observe the conduct of the instructor, conduct training, and if satisfactory, a final approval will be issued. For hot air balloons, it's in the draft process, and as we said, we will share when the time comes. The other one was for maintenance engineer on board the aircraft. How is the duty time taken care of? It will be taken care of, contain the regulations for fatigue that are compiled with all crew. So with this one, the issue of fatigue management, we have a team sitting, the entire KCAA this week, and they're actually reviewing the FRMS, because in this region, we actually don't have data. So once they give us a draft, we'll call you back and share about the fatigue management. The other one was about deadhead transportation. It's not a new regulation. The text was amended for clarity. Definition was added to enhance meaning of the existing regulation. That's 2484, which defined the same thing. However, the new definition was deleted to accommodate the stakeholders' comment. So someone else commented, when you have the liberty to borrow from other CAAs, adapt less restrictive version and allow our industry to build on that. This has been noted and incorporated in the KCAA regulations, making guidance material. So the one for 5 verses 21, that one we've already addressed. So the training matrix, I've talked about it. So the next one was for regulation 233, to provide clarity on what constitutes suitably qualified, quantify the qualification to simply interpretation. And for qualified persons, are they qualified by the operator only, or the CA needs approval? So the approval was reviewed. The authority will develop guidance material to support in this area so that it's clear on both sides. So for the air ambulance and Medivac, it's ongoing in Naivasha as we speak. We've dealt with the matrix. 251.2, we've addressed that. It's the same one about the data. So the same thing that Evelyn talked about. So the next one is clarify on regulation 44.5. What happens to charter operators who are going to new areas and destination? So 45.2, 3, and 6 address the concerns of charter operations, outlining different ways this regulation can be compiled with. The requirement is a standard from ICAO, and we said we've already looked at it, and if you need to give us more wordings, we are more than happy to do that, but it's been addressed in the AOC. And we've given different ways of complying. So it's not fixed to one thing. So whatever works for your operation, that is what will guide you.
Just to clarify on that, Regulation 44 for 12-month currency, aerodromes and areas, The standard requires for special airfields, which in your Part C would be addressed under the different categories. So from Part C and below, that's where you'd have to give the requirements for doing an actual flight. There were 2 items that were missing from the standard, so they will be incorporated just to make sure that is clear.
Thank you, Jean. The next one, we say that Pell will address it. So this one's for the wordings, we returned it back to aircraft. Accountable executive was adapted accordingly. The next one, this one touches on AOC and admin. They talked about holds or have held an ATPL or commercial. So the proposal was not adapted as the regulation is clear about it. So this one, the next one, it's what airworthiness has just talked about. The next one was for the cabin crew, which we took it back to 1 cabin crew for 50 passengers. For exits, they wanted us to replace with floor level exits, but the terminology exit maintained to cover all exits. So the next one talked about the operator shall ensure that the flight data analysis program is non-punitive and contains adequate safeguards to protect the sources of the data in accordance with the civil aviation, that's safety manual regulations, and the reason in accordance with Annex 6, Part 1, 3.3. So we said that with the current text in Annex 6 states as follows. Section 3.3.3, as of 7th November 2019, a flight data analysis program shall contain adequate safeguards to protect the sources of the data in accordance with Appendix 3 to Annex 19. So the provision, we have just transposed it. So the next one, it says in the event of a temporary change of operator, the records specified in subregulation 1 shall be made available to the new operator. In the event of any permanent change of operator, the records shall be transferred to the new operator. So we said it should be deleted because it's a repeat. So we've already removed, as said, in the event of any permanent change of operator, the records shall be transferred to the new operator. So because it's a repeat, thank you for that. So the next one, they requested we delete, so we removed subparagraph 6 since it refers to owner and not the operator. AOC and admin regulations refer to commercials, air transportation. So the 143, we've proposal undertaken and numbers done. Same with the next one. So regulation 7, confirm single engine aircraft do not require an MEL. We have changed that and we have reviewed the wording, multi-engine removed from the regulation to allow for MEL to be used across all applicable aircraft. For regulation 11, even for flights originating and ending at the same aerodrome, certain documents should be carried on board. Examples they gave is operational flight plan, and the rest are there. So we adapted the requirements to all regulations. Regulation 27, the regulation was amended accordingly to reflect the right title. So the next one, we say the same thing just to reflect the right reference. So for regulation 38.3, it was amended to reflect the right citation. And so is the next one. For 204, the person proposed the requirement for FOO license for scheduled flights. The regulation was amended to have, so if you look at the right side, a person shall not act as a flight operations officer in releasing a passenger carrying commercial air transport operation aircraft unless the person holds an FOO license or PIC and is currently qualified by the air operator certificate holder for the operations and type of aircraft used. So for a so they also said for a scheduled flights, our comment was current regulations allow the PAC to self-dispatch where the approved method of control does not require a flight dispatcher. The next one for 208, the proposal was adapted appropriately. 209, it's been recommended that guidance material will be developed first. Then once we are satisfied, then we will move everything to the guidance material. And that's the same one for regulation 210. So this one for the instrument approach, regulation 39.4 was not changed as the wording still retains the word should in the regulations. Then regulation 142.1c was amended to include the word below for purpose of enhancing meaning. So this other one, if you look at it for the sake of time, I won't read everything, but the one for regulation 39.4, as we continue, whatever was proposed, we have adapted, and if you look on the right-hand side, you'll be able to read it. The matrix is in the website. So 191, the text has also been amended accordingly. And the proposed text, a person shall not commence a takeoff unless the passengers are briefed prior to takeoff in accordance with the AOC manual procedures. And location and operation of fire extinguishers for operations that do not require use of cabin crew. So it will be briefed at that point. So for the typo, for the next one, 82, we have amended, and it's on the right side. So the amendment for clarification, which was for the 238 also, we say no operator may use a person, nor may any person serve as an instructor in an established cabin crew training program unless where applicable with respect to aircraft type or position involved that person. So the next one also, part D, we also said in relation to a cabin crew 15 hours, which shall apply to a cabin crew member as it applies to flight engineers. That one we mentioned earlier. So this one for 252, that one talks about the FOO. We retained it. We said a review was done to compare the current duty time requirements against other CAAs of the same size and complexity, South Africa, Ghana, USA, and others. They have similar requirements of 10 hours duty limitation, so we did not consider the change. So the next comment, the regulation is very limiting to charter operators. In a scenario, a company obtains a charter in a location it has never been. We have talked about it earlier. That is what Jane also just emphasized some more. So this one, we also mentioned that we have at least 2 years experience for a cabin crew member. So 248.4, the concern was duty time should be tracked for the crew that are on active duty. Active duty may start a week before repositioning. This regulation is not necessary. This will introduce a lot of complexity in compliance. It is best industry practice in Europe. So we said it was not amended. It was in 2007, 2013, and 2018. And it is required by the annex. So for this one, it's been misplaced. It's an airworthiness issue, and we're going to remove it from AOC and admin. That's 10.2. 57.4, it just talked about responsibility for operations control shall be delegated only to the PIC and to a flight operations officer, flight dispatcher, if the operator's approved method of control and supervision of flight operations require the use of flight operations officer, flight dispatcher personnel, and ICAO Annex 6, Part 3, Chapter 2, Section 2.6 defines duties and responsibilities of an FOO in operations, control, and supervision alongside flight crew members. Says the FOO must be licensed in accordance with ICAO Annex 1. So they're requesting that we delete the highlighted section since any flight operation for commercial air transport require operations control and supervision, that only a flight operations officer and a flight crew member can participate. This one, we handled it earlier on. So for the 151.2, we reviewed what they had requested to amend to read. In this context, the person was used to refer to persons currently given the mandate to conduct performing calculations. This can be the pilot in command, flight dispatcher, or persons delegated that task in conjunction with an approved method of control. So for the 252, that's what we addressed earlier on, between the 10 and the 12 hours, so we left it at 10. So this one for 262.6, we have deleted the text. Same for 7. And for 263, the comment was adapted and the name of flight operations officer included to the regulation 263D. Regulation 45 is what we projected earlier on. The other one is okay, I'll just go ahead and look at the other concern came with a maximum distance from an adequate aerodrome for 2-engine aeroplanes without an EDTO approval. So the text that we have adapted, we got it straight from the annex, but whatever it is that the concern was, which we'll project later, we will address it in the TGMs. And when we do that, I know it's Ephraim from AMREF who was concerned. We'll invite you and any other person who wants to come when we're reviewing our TGM when it comes to EDTO. I think that's it from our end, and we are open for questions from the floor.
Thank you. Just a moment, I open. Captain Mary, thank you for taking us through. That was a good presentation. Honestly, we are happy that you actually went through most of our comments. Well, not everything was incorporated, but we are generally satisfied that you took your time to go through what we commented as dispatchers. Now, just if I can comment on when you're going through, we went through duty time. If you peer review with the FAA has done a write-up along with the Flight Safety Foundation with regards to fatigue management for aircraft dispatchers. That is where we actually put in a comment for dispatchers where they can be released from duty for an entire 24-hour period in a 7-week period And also the FA currently has an 8-hour duty period, not 10. So maybe you can just check that. They've actually done a whole write-up with the flight, along with the Flight Safety Foundation. Back to the interpretation, the current draft still reads a flight operations officer or flight dispatcher means a licensed and suitably qualified person designated by the operator to engage in the control and supervision of flight operations in accordance with civil aviation personnel licensing regulations, who supports, briefs, and/or assists the pilot in command in the safe conduct of the flight, whether licensed or not suitably qualified. So we found that to be a bit of a gray area, because it suggests a flight operations officer can be licensed or not, and yet they require to have a qualification. So it's conflicting with ICAO Annex 1, Annex 6, and also the personnel licensing regulations. So maybe you can just maybe check the interpretation and definition of the flight operations officer. Okay, I think that was the main one we had, and then there's regulation 204. Regulation 204, it reads, a person shall not act as a flight operations officer in releasing a scheduled passenger carrying commercial air transport operation aircraft, unless that person holds a flight operations license or an air transport pilot's license, and is currently qualified by the air operator certificate holder for the operation and type of aircraft used. So in our view, an ATPL, even in the account annexes and personnel licensing regulations, an ATPL privileges do not allow a flight crew member to release an aircraft. However, the pilot in command, whether they have an ATPL or a CPL, work hand in hand together with the FO to conduct the release. So it's upon their mutual agreement that a flight can be released. But either way, the pilot in command still remains the sole responsibility for the flight. But on ground for release, it's a shared responsibility. So we found that to be a bit ambiguous, that someone holding an ATPL can actually release a flight, yet their privileges they are not allowed to exercise such a privilege in their license. Apart from that, most of the items you've covered. We'd request you review, especially the one for duty time. It's a concern amongst our stakeholders. The 10 hours duty, if you count 10 hours duty, in a month, FOs are doing over 300 hours of duty time, which is excessive. Pilots are conducting a maximum of 160. They get enough rest. They have a duty schedule, a duty and rest period schedule for when they carry out duties. FOs, on the other hand, they actually do continuous monitoring of the flight. So they monitor, it's still a matter of, they're sharing more duty time with the pilots, in essence, but they're getting less of a rest period, which is really a fatigue issue across the industry, especially for operators who have night operations. Yeah, so it's a bit of a huge concern in that aspect, but we welcome you to also advise us on the best way forward. Other than that, we are happy. Thanks for the presentation.
So my name is Susan from CASAS. I'd like to draw your attention to Regulation 228, Subregulation 3B. It states that a flight operations officer made within the preceding 12 months shall at least a one-way qualification flight in the flight crew compartment of the aeroplane. While this might not be a problem for other people, for some type of aircraft, it might prove problematic. For example, we operate Adonia, asking us to put a flight operations officer in the flight crew compartment, which only accommodates just the pilot and the co-pilot, might be a problem. So maybe that can be amended to accommodate people who have aircraft that do not have a provision for a third person sitting in the flight crew compartment. Thank you.
Okay, that's noted.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Captain Merikai, for your detailed submission. And I do also second that you have gone at length to address most of the comments that were put in, including some that were just orally submitted during the last stakeholders. Now, one that was not clear to me is the one on Regulation 251.2, where it introduced definition of location of rest in longitudinal terms. Is that still current, or is it been left as is? As is, okay. I welcome the change you made to the Regulation 106, which had left a gap in terms of application of the ATDO, and I also welcome the invitation for further guidance and determination through the TGMs. So from where I sit, it addresses my immediate gap is addressed. However, it creates another gap in terms of interpretation of aircrafts that do not fall within the category that you have put there. So that's the only concern right now, which for the safety of aviation, it will mean someone with an aircraft that is less than 20 seats, less than 45 ton, they can operate beyond 60 minutes without any limit. So that's the only concern on that one. I had a comment last time, or rather a submission last time, about including the electronic signature in our regulations. I've not seen it anywhere because now we are moving to EFB platforms for most of the aviation data, and that would be a gap. In the ICAO annexes, they do give the state provisions to put these under their regulations, both for the EFB itself in terms of the approval, which you have done, but in terms of electronic signatures, it is not addressed anywhere. Where we have certain documents like, say, operation of flight plan, can it be appended through an electronic signature? So that's a concern that I would like to be addressed. Otherwise, well done, thanks, that's from me.
Captain Mary, thank you. Thanks for your presentation. Just wondering, I believe you've received the matrices that I had sent. Okay. The last 3 occasions that I did send you, send KCAA rather, details on incorrect citations and typos and all that. I see that in the current 2022 draft, those errors are still present. So I'm not sure how I should go ahead with this, because the matrix that I submitted last week had 40 items on this regulation, out of which 20 were really incorrect citations. So do I need to go through them, or will you look at them, because it'll just take up time?
No, because you said it to me again, so there's a team looking at it.
Fantastic,
right now. Yes.
Thank you. And out of that, and then in addition, nine items over and above the 20, there were 9 items that were errors or crucially misplaced paragraphs that really do not belong there. Maybe I should touch on 1 or 2 of them. Those are quite important.
Can we project them? 1 minute.
Sure. Maybe I can give you the regulations?
As she finds it, I'd just like to answer the gentleman from the FO Association. Since this item has come up several times during the presentations, so maybe we can project the current Annex 6 definition for FO, and that is the exact definition that we have. So maybe we are making reference to different amendments, but this is a current amendment.
But I don't know if you can hear me. With that, we noticed that in the annex as well, but I'm sure the same way we are trying to find a better quality in terms of our aviation operations. With the FAA, there's no way, I hold an FAA license, but there's no way I would be allowed, if I had no license, there's no way I'd dispatch an aircraft without a license. Yes, it's in the annex, but the FAA themselves filed a difference with that regard. So it would be good for Kenya as well to probably file a difference to allow us only licensed flight operations officers under your oversight can release an aircraft for a flight. So that one we noticed as well, and we put it as a comment in our stakeholder comments.
That's okay.
And then
we have had you.
Yeah, and then maybe just finally, if you could check regulation 121, just quickly. Regulation 121 subpart 1, it says an operational flight plan shall be completed for every intended flight. The operational flight plan shall be approved and signed by the pilot in command, and where applicable, signed by the flight operations officer or flight dispatcher. So in our view, we are requesting you delete where applicable, since an operational flight plan, in most cases, especially for scheduled operations, is meant to be signed by the dispatcher and the pilot in command. And then for regulation 121 subpart 6, a person shall not continue a flight from an intermediate aerodrome without a new operational flight plan if the aircraft has been on ground more than 6 hours. Now, when you generate an operational flight plan, waypoints remain the same. Your fuel policy remains the same. Unless any significant change has been made, most likely the operational flight plan is still valid. So we are wondering why that is there, yet it's a bit vague, or rather we do not understand why a new operational flight plan should be made if an aircraft has been on ground. Because you'll still issue new weather briefs, and if there's any major change in terms of maybe winds or something, or weather, you may need to probably amend the flight plan, but you cannot issue a new one because the waypoints remain the same.
Okay, for the sake of time, because we
I'm
need
done.
to proceed. Well noted, and we'll look into that. Thank you. Okay, Ramesh, it has refused to project.
That's okay. I can actually, if you can maybe project the regulations then, would that be okay?
No, actually, the machine has, okay, there it is. Okay.
Ah, excellent. All right. Item 1 is the one that deals with a misplaced 2 paragraphs. Right. Regulation 7 on inoperative instruments and equipment. Seven D and E do not actually belong there. They bear really no relationship to the regulation. It may, as I've said, possibly applicable to sub-regulation 8, which deals with RVSM, because these 2 items are dealing with RVSM. So they do not belong in this 7, sub 7.
Okay,
Maybe you
Ramesh?
could look into that.
Yeah, that's okay. We'll look into all of them.
Sure.
Since it's something that you send it to me again today. Once we are done, I'll let you know.
Right. I would like us to. So I'm skipping the incorrect citations.
Yes.
Right. Thank you. Regulation 45(1), proficiency checks. This is a misplaced paragraph, and it's a repetition of sub-regulation 2. It is just a typo.
Ramesh, there's a team I have in Naivasha. I'm just taking advantage that they're looking at the new regulations.
Okay,
I've
good.
sent this to them. So unless there's anything new besides that, they're working on it.
Okay, good. Let me now regulation item 13, which is regulation 106(1)(b). Now, let's just to be clear, the EDTO approval is applicable to aircraft with 2 engines or more and turbine engines, right? So that's very clear. However, there is a quote in the matrix that has been provided by KCAA on the fact that why they've lumped up piston engine aircraft together with this regulation for a non-EDTO approval, right? So it is misplaced, and if I direct your attention, maybe you can just make a note of this, Annex 6, Part 1, Section 4.7, which is what has been quoted, doesn't even apply to piston engine aircraft. So our proposal is to leave the 120-minute rule for piston engine, twin piston engine, because otherwise, with the lower speeds, the relative speeds of small twin engine aircraft, this will really have an effect on their operations, on remote area operations. So kindly look into this, please. Thank you. And by the way, it also quotes attachment C, but that doesn't make, it's not even any reference to the regulation. Okay, item number 17, regulation 140. The words visibility are missing. They're hanging in the air for aircraft having 2 engines or less 1,500 meters what? So I hope you can see what I mean. Thank you. Item 19. This is the title of the regulation, and this appears in the middle of nowhere, really. I've tried to look for it, and it just says general. So we need to qualify what general, and I know it's dealing with performance. So a proposal was to readjust the title to performance general, because after that there are regulations that deal with the performance of the aircraft.
Okay, there's no problem.
Okay, thank
My
you.
request again, because of time, there's a team looking at it,
That's fine.
and I will get back to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as you can, I'm sure you're pleased that I'm skipping through a lot of the items because of time.
Yes, I appreciate that. If we had it before, we would have addressed it. But as I said, there's someone looking at it.
Right.
And I will also personally send you an email.
Okay, can
Yeah,
we go
but
to?
we'll look.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, we look at all of them. They're
Okay.
being looked at as we speak.
All right. Item 25 in that case, please. Yeah, item 25, it does require a qualification of this, yeah? It is, again, it's a paragraph that is hanging in the air, and I know I have put in a reference of where KCAA have managed to pick this paragraph. And so I have put in a suggestion at the bottom. Thank you. Right, this is the one we talked about, the issue of item 26. Regulation 205, Company Procedures Indoctrination. I think the 40 hours for a one-size-fits-all, this is a one-size-fits-all regulation. It really is, Captain, this is inapplicable to smaller operators. So I have put in a suggested paragraph, a suggested revision rather, and unless you have something to comment on this, because the first item on the reason that I've given is that the subject matter that are prescribed in the subparagraphs 2A to E does not even require 40 hours, where you just look through it on a normal operation. The other subjects that are covered, the technical subjects are adequately covered in all the regulations. So I feel that this 40 hours is extremely onerous. And maybe I'll wait for your comment once I finish on this, yeah?
Not a problem. We'll look at it. I remember we spoke about it in the morning.
Okay.
So the team will sit together and we'll review.
Okay, thank you. Item 27, again, we spoke about it. There's the entire syllabi for all these 9 or 10 regulations are in the main body. Maybe they can be moved into a schedule. Item 30, in my opinion, is extremely important that we
just to excuse us, please, since these are matters you are brought during the exercise, and you have already...
Excuse me, it was sent last week, please.
Okay.
With due respect.
Okay, would you allow us to handle it, since already we have it, and allow the team to handle it, and they will revert to you, and in case there are issues, because this you have done a very good job, we really appreciate, and we may want to go through all of them, but since we already have it, we will revert and have committed that there's a team working at it, and we shall revert. If you are not satisfied with what they revert back to you, you have a direct access to what we will discuss.
Incidentally, thank you, Mr. Muhaya. Just out of due respect, these were submitted in June.
Okay.
This particular item was submitted in June.
Was it included?
But we can, I don't know.
You never got it? Okay, we are trying to confirm, but we'll handle it. Thank you.
Okay, would you like me to stop? Is that
Yes.
what the intention is?
Yes,
Should I stop?
yes, we appreciate if you stop, because the matrix, we have it, and we shall make sure that you get the right one. You'll get a response. It's detailed, and we appreciate. Thank you very much.
May we go ahead and comment?
Somebody spoke.
I have a mic, so I'm asking if I can go ahead and comment.
Oh, okay. I was looking for whoever is
All right. So behind here, back left.
I've seen you.
All right.
Okay.
My name is Paul Njoroge again, from Kenya Airways. Commenting on this is, first of all, appreciating the work well done. We wouldn't be here in this many numbers if you haven't been listening to us. So for the first time in many years, Annex 9 is being practiced, which is facilitation, and especially during the COVID period. So appreciated from KCAA. One item that I'd not raised, and I know what I will have to say, because I've said it, but there's an item that I need to ask and raise on the floor. We had raised it under instruments, under the regulation on instruments, but it's also in the operation of aircraft, which is 215, 5G, which is the requirement for one to do an NDB approach during the initial training. Yet, most of the NDBs have been decommissioned. So it should be as applicable in our, so something to think about in terms of how you review that. So that's a comment. On the one for FOs, which is 252, we also talked about it requiring for 10 hours. In fact, we had raised it to 12 hours because KCAA ATC are doing 12-hour duty. So we wanted to be in line with what KCAA is doing in terms of their duty. I think 8 hours is too restrictive. And also, we need to follow the standard. From what I've heard, if ICAO has documented who an FOO is, it would be restrictive, even for the national airline, for only FOOs based in Nairobi to dispatch an aircraft. We do self-dispatch of a big aircraft today, so it's not necessary. So that's my comment on that. So if you're going to review that, we would like to be invited for that meeting. I will go to the comment, and on this one, allow me to spend 3 minutes or 5. 251. 2. That's the regulation on rest, minimum rest period for crew. And 251.2 talks about, and I'll read verbatim, and I know you know about it, when a rest period has been taken by a person at a place which is not more than 50 miles away from the person's ordinary place of residence, it shall be deemed to be sufficient if the rest period includes a period of 8 hours falling between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. in the morning. Now, that means that if you fly an aircraft and land in Kisumu, or even Naivasha, at midnight, 1, you have to wait until the next day. So you spend today, another extra day, and you leave on the 3rd day to be able to fulfill this requirement. This requirement is not under Annex 6, under operation of aircraft. And your comments, and thank you for going through this, because in the matrix you said, stakeholders required more scientific evidence to warrant migration from the regulation. Hence, the regulation was not amended. Thank you for saying you look at it. However, we've been raising this since 2013. I know it's a new team, but the reason for stressing it is because this is not a standard. We have been talking about keeping the standards as per ICAO. Neither is it required in any jurisdiction. We provided EASA jurisdiction, we provided FAA jurisdiction, and it also goes against your CAA circular, CAA AC Ops 033 on flight duty time scheme, which really explains that minimum rest is 10 hours minimum, as long as it includes 8 hours of rest. 2 hours is for the transport. So I really request that this is reviewed before the final regulation is submitted for approval. I submit that to yourselves.
Okay, thank you. All your comments have been noted. I know it's an issue for the 251 too, and we are relooking because it borders down with fatigue management, and we cannot leave it out. We can't adapt what it is that you had requested earlier on, because now we have to consider all other stakeholders. So for now, we'll keep it, and we are working on it. If you have any other write-up, we'd be more than happy to look at it, because as you said, it's not a standard. But it's not, we can't look at regulation sometimes standalone, because we're looking at safety, we're looking at fatigue management. And that's the reason why we are working on it, and that's a surety. And even as we speak, there's a KCAA team going on this week reviewing fatigue management.
I'd like to bring back, yes, it's on fatigue management. However, there's a table below, 251. There's a table below that already points out the rest times. And it's in line with all the other CAAs. So we have a statement in our regulation that it's outside ICAO, outside of other CAAs, yet we are keeping it, and this has been the case for many, many years. We don't want to address it. So yes, I understand you're going to look at it, but I feel this has been swept under the table for a very, very long time. It needs to be addressed. You cannot fly an aircraft to Machakos and keep it there for 2 days because of a regulation like this. So this is a very restrictive regulation, and it does not help on rest. I will read for you, and allow me to read it, that it doesn't, so on rest time, when you go away for a longer period of time, you require more time to recuperate, and it is not advisable to have local night in the minimum rest. Local night is for longer periods of time for rest, for recuperation. Let me read for you from your regulation. When you have fatigue management, and this is under CAA AC Ops 033, when you have longer periods of fatigue, under 4.63,
Hello everyone, welcome to the 8th episode of Ask Your Aviator series. My name is Christopher Igala Kigalo, a Senior Air Transport Officer at Kenya Civil Aviation Authority. Today on Ask Your Aviator series, we are going to take you through one of the functions of the Civil Aviation Authority, which involves facilitation of air transport. In facilitation of air transport as provided internationally by International Civil Aviation Organization and KCAA as the oversight body in Kenya, we have to ensure that passengers and shippers are properly facilitated at the airport. In doing this, we involve several agencies, both public and private. An example of agencies in the private sector includes the airlines, ground handling agencies, catering services, taxi services, and financial institutions. Public bodies involve Kenya Revenue Authority, Customs Department, Immigration Department. We have the Plant Health Inspectorate Department, Directorate of Livestock, the Nuclear Authority, the Kenya Bureau of Standards, among others. So all these agencies have to coordinate in order to facilitate a passenger. So join me today as we go through the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport to show you how an international passenger is facilitated on departure and the seamless coordination between all the agencies. Thank you. Hello everyone, welcome to the 8th episode of Ask Your Aviator series. My name is Christopher Igala Kigalo, a Senior Air Transport Officer at Kenya Civil Aviation Authority. Today on Ask Your Aviator series, we are going to take you through one of the functions of the Civil Aviation Authority, which involves facilitation of air transport. In facilitation of air transport as provided internationally by International Civil Aviation Organization and KCAA as the oversight body in Kenya, we have to ensure that passengers and shippers are properly facilitated at the airport. In doing this, we involve several agencies, both public and private. An example of agencies in the private sector includes the airlines, ground handling agencies, catering services, taxi services, and financial institutions. Public bodies involve Kenya Revenue Authority, Customs Department, Immigration Department. We have the Plant Health Inspectorate Department, Directorate of Livestock, the Nuclear Authority, the Kenya Bureau of Standards, among others. So all these agencies have to coordinate in order to facilitate a passenger. So join me today as we go through the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport to show you how an international passenger is facilitated on departure and the seamless coordination between all the agencies. Thank you, and let's start our journey. How are you, sir?
Fine, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning to you. We are here today going through the airport. You may introduce yourself and tell us who you are, the organization you work for, and the role you play at the airport.
My name is Benjamin Murkomen. I'm the head of Hotel Services, KCAA. And the key role that we do as Hotel Services is to ensure that we put in place preventative measures in case of any emergency here at the airport, and ensure that we attend to those medical emergencies as soon as possible without interfering with travel and business in this airport.
How do you handle, on a normal day, how do you handle passengers who pass through your point of operation?
As you can see, we are now here at the Terminal 1A. We have new procedures based on the new protocols of COVID-19. Yes. Number one, before a traveler exits through our airport, we must screen them based on the PCR certificate that I'm presenting here at the counter. And I have my officers here who are ready to receive our travelers. Yes. So what happens, the passenger arrives, he presents or she presents our certificates from approved laboratories in Kenya. We have 43 approved to test COVID-19 certificates. So we verify they have a traveler's code that they must look at those certificates. We have a digital system that is linked to the laboratory. So once a traveler comes, they present a TT code in soft copy or in hard copy. And then we check very fast based on the Banner Bio system that we have, whether it is a genuine one or not. Once they enter into the tablet, it will produce the certificate and will put your passport and the presented from the lab. When it matches, we'll release you, you continue with your journey.
There's a much difference between the operations now and before COVID-19. Can you simply explain to us the differences that you have now and how you are doing things before COVID came around?
Absolutely. We have new procedures now because of COVID-19. There is the new norm currently, and the new norm is we must sanitize our hands, social distance the way we are now.
I hope this is more than
1.5 meters. Yes. And ensure that you are tested before you travel, because we want to ensure that the risk of COVID-19 is reduced as you travel. That is why we are, before they go to the main terminal, sure that those who are traveling have been screened and they have the right documentation before they do that. So they have to arrive here early as opposed to the times COVID-19.
Now, we already have a vaccine that arrived in Kenya recently. After Kenyans have been vaccinated and the whole world vaccination has taken place, how different will it be to travel between now and after we've gotten the vaccine?
As a country, that we have now this vaccine that we're going to use for our frontline health workers. The vaccine is part of preventative measures, being given a preventative measure so that at least they are aware that when there is the virus is there, it will reduce the risk of, the virulence of that virus. So what will happen now is that my front health workers will get the inoculation. What happens to this traveler is that they will be that confident because it will give the traveler that confidence that they have a preventative measure in themselves. It will give them immunity for a certain period of time. But that means also we will not leave the other precautionary measures. They must observe social distance, put on their masks, and ensure that they sanitize and wash their hands as they travel through our airport.
Now, Mr. Murkomen, in case a passenger appears showing symptoms of...
Yeah, in our protocols, once you have a case of COVID-19 positive arrival, what will happen is that we have to isolate that person. We have an isolation facility in this airport. Number two, we fill a form that shows person herself with a positive certificate. Then we contact our counterparts in Nairobi Metropolitan Services, whereby they will come and pick this person for further management. So we will not allow anybody presenting himself or herself to travel with a positive certificate, because we don't know whether it's a true positive or a negative. So we must confirm by ensuring that that person is returned back for further management and for further testing, so that we are sure that once they travel, they are truly negative.
Thank you very much. Final one, having worked at JKIA, we know the vaccine came through the airport the other day. Were you part of the team that received the vaccine?
Yes, as a portal officer in charge of this airport, I received the team, the CS who came to receive the vaccines. And it was a very good day because as a country, we know now we have a vaccine that will protect the citizens and our travelers who are in this country. So very soon we'll be inoculating our frontline health workers, the police, the KCAA frontline team, and the people who are in this airport, because we are all receiving travelers. So we are in the front line.
Thank you very much, Mr. Murkomen. We want to continue with our passenger facilitation journey. We are now headed to KCAA. We are entering the airport itself. We are going to see how the passenger is going to be facilitated through other facilities within the airport. We continue with our journey. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, madam.
How are you?
I'm very fine. How are you today?
Fine.
Yes.
You're welcome to KAA.
Thank you. I would wish you introduce yourself
Yeah.
and you tell us which organization you work for.
Okay. My name is Dorcas Chemo. I work for Kenya Airports Authority as a Senior Operations Manager.
Thank you, Madam Chemo.
Yes.
Tell us in short,
Yes.
what's the role of Kenya Airports Authority?
Okay, in a nutshell, Kenya Airports Authority is the airport operator. It is mandated to administer, control, and manage airports, civilian airports in the country.
So you manage all airports within the country?
Yes, within the country.
Including where we are, Jomo Kenyatta International
Including
Airport.
Jomo Kenyatta International
Thank you
Airport.
very much.
Thank you.
Now, I want you to explain to the public, how do you facilitate our passengers here at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport?
Okay.
Yes.
Kenya Airports Authority being the airport operator, we have several airports. This is being our main airport.
Yes.
We provide facilitative infrastructure for aviation services. Yes, and the aviation services, of course, include the airlines, catering services, government agencies, because as an airport operator, we cannot achieve facilitation of passengers minus all those organizations that support us into delivering customer satisfaction in our airports. Yes.
Thank you. What are some of the agencies that are involved in the passenger journey within the airport?
There are several agencies that are involved. One of them is immigration. We have customs. We have port health. We have other government agencies like anti-narcotics, security agencies like the police, who help us ensure that security on the land side is Okay. And many other agencies, like even taxi drivers, like passenger facilitation begins at home.
Yes.
Even transporters from the city to airport are all lumped together to deliver customer experience in airports. Yes.
So in essence, you are the landlord of everybody else who works within the airport.
Exactly, we are
From the
landlord.
airline to all government agencies.
Completely, yes, we are.
Thank you very much, Madam Chemo. Now to our viewers, I would like to remind you to listen keenly and engage us, because we are going to give away gift bags to people who respond to our questions correctly. And our first question for the day: do you know the difference between Kenya Airports Authority and Kenya Civil Aviation Authority? Remember to follow us on our social media handles and engage us. Now, Madam Dorcas, we can see so many gadgets here. Can you explain to us the process of now facilitating the passenger?
Thank you, I'll gladly do it.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
This is our initial security checkpoint,
Yes.
where a passenger comes.
Yes.
We have our security officers waiting upon you.
Yes.
As a customer comes, they are required to remove their shoes
Yes.
when they get here. Remove all the metallic items that they have. If they have a computer,
Yes.
they have to remove and place it in a different tray,
Yes.
and then it will now go through the process
Yes.
of security. Yes, and you can see from our left we have prohibited items that you are not supposed to travel with.
Okay.
And because of this COVID era now, make sure that you sanitize all this immediately after use. Now this one is a walk-through machine. In case you have anything that is not required,
Yes.
metallic or whatever, it will beep. And then the officer on the other side
Yes.
will do a special search.
After the items have gone through the X-ray machine,
Yes.
and in case there is any dutable item that has been identified, we normally have our customs partners on standby to check on the items that are dutable. Yes,
So the next step from here is the customs department.
exactly, that is now where we are going to.
Can you take us please to the customs department?
Let's go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, hello sir.
Yes, sir.
Would you wish to introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, the organization you work for, and what you do.
Thank you very much. I'm Robert Kirere, Head of Customs at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, passenger terminals. Customs, we play a major role at the departure. We do enforce the customs law, the various acts or other laws, and various conventions. And we do that jointly with the other security agencies at the airport. We work with Kenya Airports Authority, security agencies. We work with the police. We work with the intelligence services. And basically we are doing that to protect our border. We are doing that for us to be able not to check the smuggling of illegal wildlife trade, the products like ivory, bulk cash smuggling. We do that to check on smuggling of high value goods which could be taken out of the country. That include gold. Basically, we are here as a border control agent to ensure that no smuggling activities happens in our airport.
Now, if I'm a passenger traveling out of the country, how would you handle me?
When you come in as a passenger, you would find customs at the checkpoints working with Kenya Airports Authority just to check on what you have in your bags and what you're supposed to declare. And if you have any items that you're supposed to declare to customs, at that point you're supposed to make that declaration to the customs agent who will be present at the departure points.
And can you give an example of the items that is a mandatory that you have to declare?
Yes, all restricted items that are being taken out of the country should be declared. For example, if you are carrying currency more than or equivalent or monetary instrument equivalent to $10,000, you are supposed to make that declaration to customs. Our officers who are present at the departure will be there to guide you on how to make that declaration in a monetary instrument declaration form. And then all the items that you intend to bring back into the country should be declared to customs. For example, if you are taking out your professional toolboxes that you are going to use for your work outside the country, you are supposed to declare to customs. If you are taking out jewelry, you're attending a function, you're attending a wedding, you're supposed to declare to customs when you're leaving. If you're going out with your sporting equipments, you are supposed to make that declaration to customs. And when you make that declaration, customs will issue with your importation certificate that you are supposed to keep it, so that when you're coming back into the country, you will declare what you carried out with you, and at that point, we won't charge you taxes, or we won't collect duty on that particular item.
For example, I can see your officers here with a few bags. Maybe they can demonstrate what they do on a daily basis.
Yes, while we're doing the clearance of passengers, we found one bag with the filming equipments, which need to be declared at this point. So my officers will open it, we need to declare that, and then we issue with the importation certificate, so that when you're coming back, we'll just make a confirmation, okay, that for sure, these are the filming equipment you went out with. So at this point, we'll request to open the bag, but before that, we need to sanitize the bag. And we require a passport to make that particular declaration. We have found out that there are lenses. There's a professional camera, which we just need to check for the marks and numbers to make sure that when it is brought back, it is the same camera. So at this point, the passenger is required to give us the travel documents, and we shall process their importation certificate. So once we are done with their importation certificate, at the point of importation or coming back into the country, we'll be able just to compare the marks and numbers with what we have in the certificate, and we will be able to allow that passenger to come into the country with the equipment they took out.
Now, with that explanation, what would you advise a regular passenger on custom requirements to have a smooth flow in the airport? What would be your advice for the traveling public?
Yes, my advice to the public is always know your obligations and your entitlements. And I would really advise our travelers to log on to the KRA website, that is www.kra.go.ke, and under the Customs and Border Control, the frequently asked questions, FAQs, you're able to get all the obligations and the entitlements. A passenger should be aware of what they have in their possession and what is supposed to be declared. And I really want to advise the public to make declaration, especially for bulk currency. We've seen in the past the movement of currency where most of our traders don't make that declaration. So I would really advise that we make declaration, especially for the restricted items. That includes currencies, anything more than $10,000 or equivalent.
Now, after we registered our passenger, she's free to go now.
Yes, upon registration and doing the importation certificate, our passenger is allowed to proceed.
Now, Mr. Kirel, when you are screening the bags and you find a passenger, a departing passenger, who has not declared the restricted items, what action do you take? What are the consequences?
Failure to declare restricted items to customs is an offense. These are customs offense that will be dealt as per the provision of the Act. So we would advise all passengers who are traveling, who are leaving the country, to make sure that they declare all restricted items to customs, so that they avoid facing the penalties and the fines that are provided in the law. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. I hope to see you again.
Thank you very much.
Now, for our public, keep viewing and take much interest, because the gift bags are still coming. And our next question is, what are the restricted items that you require to declare? And if you don't declare, what are the consequences? Keep following us on our handles and engage us continuously. Now that we are through with customs, Madam Chemo, can you tell us what next?
Okay, thank you. That's a pleasure, highlighting what happens in our facilitation journey. Now we can move on to the airline counters, where the passenger will present their documents to travel. You can do the check-in, either self-check with these equipments, or you can go to the counters. In case you are a passenger who is not familiar with self-check-in, there's always an airline official around to assist.
So I can come here and get my boarding pass and board the aircraft?
Yes, please. You can come in, scan your passport,
yes,
then get your boarding pass, and then you go and drop off your bag. Yes.
Now please take us to the counter check-in.
Okay. So after the security check, the passenger now comes to the check-in counter, where he or she will present all the travel documents, passport, ticket, then they are able him or her in. The passenger will also drop the check-in bags, and of course they will weigh the hand luggage to see if it is within the requirement weight, and then the passenger is given back their bag.
Now, who manages the counters?
The counters are managed by the various airlines. Of course, we open counters based on the airline that is the passenger is traveling. Yeah, like now when you see this one, it's Kenya Airways.
Now we have Kenya Airways check-in economy class?
Yes.
Okay.
And there are many.
All these are counters?
Yeah, all these are check-in counters from the end up to here. We have 30 counters. As Kenya Airports Authority, we've adopted all the protocols, the measures for COVID-19. And that's why you see that every counter we have some hand sanitizer for the passenger to sanitize herself before presenting the papers to the airline counters. And then we also ensure that we put this glass partition to protect the staff from direct issues. Yes.
Now, after the passenger has been accepted by the airline, where do we go next?
Now, after the passenger has been accepted by the airline, we will move on.
Okay.
Yeah, where now the passenger will be cleared. That is our border control. So at this point, the passenger is still in Kenya.
Yes.
But after that point, the passenger will not be in Kenya, he will be in no man's land.
So can you take us to the immigration? We see whether we can leave Kenya today.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We now move to immigration, where the passenger will present their documents to the immigration officer, and then they will be facilitated. I think my brother from immigration can be able to take you through what happens in this passenger journey at the touch point of immigration.
Thank you very much. Welcome to Passport Control, Mr. Kigalo. As you can see here is where we control the documents, and my name is Edwin Muirore, Principal Immigration Officer, and our key role in air passenger facilitation when it comes to departure and generally at the airport is to process passengers for entry and exit into the country. What do I mean by that? If a passenger presents themselves at the immigration control on departure and is successfully processed by the immigration officer, that means that he has legally exited the country. On the other hand, when they arrive at the immigration control, on arrival by an immigration officer, it is deemed that they have legally entered the country. Once the passenger arrives, that is the travel document and the boarding. The immigration officer will, and the whole process that the immigration officer is doing is called passenger profiling, to determine your suitability for you to depart the country. So the immigration officer will receive the passport and the boarding pass, confirm that the details in the genuine document. Secondly, he will ascertain himself that the passenger standing in front of him is the same one as the passenger in the passport. That is what is called imposter control, so that you don't have to process a passenger who is standing in front of you. Thirdly, the immigration officer will ascertain that the passenger has been lawfully, if he's not of Kenya, is not a Kenyan, has been lawfully present in Kenya by looking at the resident permits, looking at the visas that were issued on arrival, totally present in Kenya. And then again, he will have to ascertain this passenger. What is his destination? Where is he going to? Does he meet the qualification to enter the country of where he is going to? In that, looking at things like the relationship, the requirements for the country of destination, the visas, and any other requirement that will permit him to enter the country of destination.
For the benefit of the public, I can see you have several counters, and I believe you receive Kenyans traveling and foreigners traveling. In Kenya, I'm sure you know how the features in our passports. How are you able to check the passports of foreign countries, whether they are authentic?
Thank you very much. You will realize that ICAO has recommended the bare minimum security features that are supposed to be in every passport. And what we have done, and surprisingly enough, is that ICAO has recommended that those security features should be easily verifiable without using complicated machines. And what we have done as a department, we have invested heavily in our officers of training. And you will realize in those few minutes as they are interacting with the passenger, they are able to verify some of these basic security features. And most of the security features can be verified using the normal light.
I can see you've got several counters marked differently. I can see other passports, Kenyan passports, East African passport, Sky Priorities. Why do you require all these counters?
First of all, you realize